Welcome to another Strat rescue. This is a 90s made in Japan Strat with a nitro finish. Really nice black and white maple neck example. Real good local guitar tech in town. Did a refret and I think he reshaped the back to a pretty noticeable V. Still thick, but not a lot of shoulder, with diminished finish on the back of the neck. Real great player's Strat. Plays like a dream, stays in tune with the bar. The bar had a lot of wiggle, so I put some Teflon tape on it, that old trick. That really makes it a lot better. None of the fender bridges, in my experience, hold up to the Callahan. The Callahan has got a real nice Teflon insert that keeps it from having almost any wiggle at all. But this is certainly very usable, and that little bit of play is quiet and not objectionable. Let's tuck this out of the way for now. The issue is, while this guitar plays great, it does not sound very good. It randomly snaps, crackles, and pops. And at first I thought I'd found the problem. I took off the output jack plate here, and the positive wire was resting in the solder joint, but the solder had given way. So I replaced that wire from here to here with some of the good shielded stuff that I use. You'll see that in a moment. That solved some of the problems, but there's still a crackle. The other issue is that the pickups, see this one here, that gap between the screw? The surgical tubing has degraded over the years, and it's really no longer pushing up against the pickguard enough. So that's getting replaced. Let me show you some of the other stuff inside. Little pro tip for you. I've got all the strings loosened up quite a bit, and I'm going to cut these strings because it's time to change them anyway, and it makes my life a lot easier. But I'm cutting them down here at the nut end, because if you cut them near the pickups, little bitty bits of metal, especially from the wound strings, end up all over your magnetic pole pieces. And they're a pain in the butt to try to get off. So there's a little tip for you. All right, another issue this guitar has, which I will solve with the fancy combination of wooden toothpicks and a bit of wood glue, is that most of the holes in the body that accept these pickguard screws are all stripped out. There's just no wood left to grab. If he wants to take this to a pro shop later and have little hardwood dowels inserted in later, that'd be even better. But in my experience, just getting in there with some glue, good quality glue. You can use Elmer's, I prefer Carpenter's glue, and toothpicks will certainly buy it a lot of time and be fairly solid. Let's open this up. All right, let me desolder the wires I installed the other day. First of all, the one going to the output jack. Very nice shielded wire. I use this a lot in amps as well. I know that's not the problem. And the other wire that came up just now, which I wanted to, is the new bridge ground. More on that in just a moment. Let me move this out of the way. Now, the bridge ground in this guitar was two separate yellow wires as it came in, with a big splice here, and underneath that the tape, the solder was terrible. So that was a bad ground reference for the entire thing. So I replaced it with this. It's nothing fancy. It's 22 gauge Teflon, because it was the closest wire I had to hand. I don't care about using cloth covered. If this were a real one from the 50s, certainly. Someone else previously shielded this with copper foil, and little bits of it are floating around. I'll make sure all those are out. Let me do a continuity check on the foil from here to here. And that will be tied to the metal through this. At that point, the ground will be made to the output jack. I'll confirm that towards the end. But first, let me just do a good old-fashioned continuity test. All right, so here to here, and here to here. Yeah, no more than 4 ohms difference from here to here. And some of that might just be these slightly older cables I have on my meter. The leads I have on there are not Weller, fluke leads, and I absolutely hate them. So I'm going to be replacing them with some good quality silicone leads. I need to talk to Brad about what brand he likes, since he owns like every meter under the sun. He'll have a good opinion to share on that. So I know this shielding is good. Let's move to the Pickguard itself. Before we do, take a note of all these surfaces where the shielding copper comes up here, which will make contact with whatever material is on the bottom of the Pickguard. Someone in the past has either been snipping their strings right over these pickups an awful lot, or it's possible this wasn't taped off when the new frets were done. I hope that's not the case. Anyway, these little bits of metal don't really hurt anything, but it's hard to get those little filings off because they want to stick on there pretty well. I'll try some tape. See if any of it wants to stick to the tape more than it sticks to the magnet. Let me try that real quick. That's a heck of a lot better. Now, as to what's here now, it's a mixture of good but not great, and pretty good for the year of manufacture. But this switch is feeling kind of flimsy. Good quality wire throughout. These pots are pretty good, but they're not all the same. And given that we have the crackle, and it happens on any pickup position, I'm going to replace them all. I've got some Mojo Tone Vintage Taper 250Ks for that. Another big problem is the owner wanted this base plate installed here on the bridge pickup, but it's just held in place by wax, and it's come totally loose at this end, and vibrates and feeds back as microphonic as heck. So I'm going to try some silicone to help that. But I need to take all these pickups off so I can replace these old surgical rubber tubes because they just have no tension left. They don't hold the pickup flush to the Pickguard, and when you screw the Pickguard down, these just rise up and there's nothing you can do about it. I'll probably reuse this cap. There's nothing wrong with it. That shielding is not the best. Is it continuous? Not really. I think I'm going to try to peel this off and give it a continuous piece that goes from beneath the pots to surrounding the pickups. It's only going to help somewhat since they're true single coils. I don't know what they are, whether they're American or Japanese single coils. I don't care, but the important thing is that they're not the ceramic. They are individual magnetized pole pieces, so they should sound pretty good. Let me get all this removed and get this to pretty much a clean slate. And we'll turn our attention probably first to getting this to set up with some silicone, because the wax is just not doing the trick. All right, with the knobs off, and the knobs don't match each other. Good thing I've got some new ones, but this one's got a dark blue, and this one's the dirty gold. These are the pot shafts on the stock one. You know, if someone were to list this guitar from Fender 90s Japan on eBay, they'd be proud of, all original components, etc., etc. They're not very good compared to the shaft and collar bushing on this Mojo Tone made CTS here. Just a lot better quality part, not that expensive. So quality matters. All right, everything off, and yeah, that's really horrible. And there's just almost no conductivity. It breaks here, almost breaks there, it breaks there, it breaks there. So just lots of little pieces, not a single plane. This has a separate small piece of aluminum that I will reuse, but these are the old bushings. This is the new bushing, so much smaller diameter on the Japanese. 3/8 goes in here. Doubt the 3/8 will go in here. Yeah, I got to ream these out. but this will be no problem. That's a thicker piece of aluminum. So let me ream these out. I'll actually use a unibit for that. And let me show you the other thing I've done. Just get it set up. So where did it go? Here it is. The bridge pickup, that telly style base plate was all loose. And the reason that I think it came loose is that it wasn't aligned properly when it was wax coated. And it wasn't really wax coated. They just had some wax in between, then it was pressed in place. And since these holes didn't line up, when they went to put it in the guitar, the screw actually kind of pushed against the metal and moved it out of the way. So these are 6x32 screws. They're the screws that hold it to the pickguard. I'm very careful with this when it doesn't have the cover on because you can tear up the coils. But anyway, so I took this off, and between using a little bit of a razor blade and then heating it up with my heat gun and a paper towel, I got the excess wax off both surfaces, gave it little drops of silicone, sorry. I always get those mixed up. People get mad at me when I talk about transistors like they're fake boobs. And then use these screws with these Keps nuts to clamp this in place while the silicone sets, which means it cannot move. And when this dries, I'll take it off. There'll be a perfect pass-through. There'll be no metal-to-metal contact, so the screws won't break that seal like they did the first time. I used the Keps because it was at hand, but I didn't use the tooth bit of it. It doesn't need to be that tight. So I'll let this sit up while I do the rest of the work. It should be ready to go. I'll show you the rest of the in progress in just a moment, but I thought this was a good time to show you the length of the uncompressed new surgical tubing versus the old stuff, which is not just compressed, but I think it was cut much shorter to begin with. This was not really doing much to keep the pickups tight. This will be much better. All right, about ready to put back in the guitar. We're going to connect the ground wire and the output wire first, then test it. Then we'll put the knobs on once I'm sure it doesn't need to come back out. Much nicer pots and hardware. You can see here everything's very neat. No, I didn't use cloth-covered pushback wire. This is 22 gauge stranded, silver tinned, Teflon coated. It's more than sufficient. You can see here I've got this bus wire connecting all three pots and tooth washers down there. In the extremely unlikely event that the pot comes loose, primarily it would just be due to this plastic changing size over the years, maybe even with heat. You've got the bus bar, which will keep the pots from spinning. My buddy Lane uses 12 gauge. I find that 16 gauge is more than sufficient. I'm gonna let you Strat fiends out there take a close look at this right here. And you can see that I did not wire it the traditional Strat way. This gives the benefit of having 50s wiring so that the tone stack is only connected to the output, not the input. So 50s wiring on a Gibson, same benefit. You don't need a bright cap. So let me reconnect those two wires and we'll make sure this thing makes the sounds we want and no other kinds of sounds. And then we'll get around to fixing those pickguard screw holes. So now, the last thing is that there's a little bit of crackle as the shielding comes in and out of contact with the other shielding. That should go away, and that little static you heard there, once it's all screwed down. But to get it screwed down, I've got to go in there and mess with these holes. The bridge pickup is still a little bit microphonic as a result of that base plate. And I think I'm going to put some clear nail polish on these pole pieces. That's also contributing to the issue. So let me do the clear nail polish, and then I'll do the holes here, and we'll revisit this in just a minute. I'm not going to show you the holes. It's just cutting a a toothpick, sometimes in half, sticking it in there with some glue, trimming it flush, then screwing everything down, and the screws will make everything kind of work the way it ought. And then later, if a real woodworker wants to go in there and put in some dowels, the toothpicks will drill out along with everything else. So it's a good fix, relatively non-intrusive, and certainly cheap, which is good in this case. All right, the screws are all set in toothpicks and Tight Bond 2, and the new switch tip and knobs, all Fender original parts that match the discoloration on the pickup covers have been installed. Everything's working great. Just put a little coat of clear nail polish on each pole piece so that if you touch the pole piece, you don't get that zzz through the amp. The better way to do it is to shield all the pole pieces, so they actually run copper tape across all 6 of them, that goes to the ground. But that can change the sound. But then again, so can that base plate. But it doesn't always happen, but when it happens, that's an easy fix. Just put some nail polish on so your skin's not actually contacting it, and it comes off really easily should you feel the need. Or you can change the color, you can go rainbow. Might be cool on a George Harrison Rocky tribute. Anyway, I'm gonna let the nail polish set and the glue dry, and in about 30 minutes I'm gonna put strings on this and we'll see what it sounds like. Or hear what it sounds like. Hear what it sounds like. Okay, it's all finished up and it's sounding really nice now. So just a quick level check. That 50s wiring really makes these things come alive. It's really nice. It's a very subtle thing, just moving that one wire. Well, you gotta wire the switch separately for tone versus the pickup selection and where it connects. But if you go back and look at it, you'll figure it out. It's pretty simple stuff. But new strings, I gotta do some stretching. But for a guitar with single coils, this is really quiet in this space. And this is not always the quietest space for guitars to be, so I'm very pleased with how this came out.